Hello, dear Aries. I know you weren't sent to this world to love in an ordinary way. You were born from fire and you love like fire, fierce, honest, unapologetically willing to burn yourself, just to keep the one you love warm. But there's something no one ever told you. That very same fire might be the reason the one you love most ends up walking away. Not because they didn't love you, but because they couldn't handle the heat of a heart that hasn't yet learned to hold the flame, only to set everything ablaze. Today I want to tell you a story, not a story about winning or losing in love, but a journey back to yourself, back to the soul who's always loved with everything they had, and yet somehow still felt alone. And that story begins where every Aries miracle is born, with the very first flame and the reason why. It always burns away the things you hold most dear. Not everyone is born with a fire inside, but you, Aries, you're one of the rare souls forged from the very first spark of the universe, the fire in you. It doesn't wait for someone to ignite it. It doesn't need anyone to teach it how to burn. It rises from within, wild, radiant, and fiercely free. You enter love like a warrior walks into a sacred battle. No armor, no strategy, no holding back. And the one who's lucky enough to be chosen by you, they get to feel something they may have never felt before. They are loved fully, fearlessly, all at once. You love like there's no tomorrow. You give like this is your last chance to live a full life. You pour your soul into a look, into an embrace, into every text, every fleeting moment. And in the beginning, it feels like magic. They feel seen. They feel alive inside your flame, lit up, held, cherished by every beat of your heart. But then, someday, a day that looks no different than the one before, that light starts to feel too bright. The warmth in your eyes starts to feel like pressure. The passionate hug starts to feel like possession. Your beautiful presence begins to feel like too much, and something strange happens. The person you loved with everything you had, they become the first to pull away. Aries, have you ever felt that? When you give it all, and all you hear back is silence. When you love with instinct, but the other person steps back without explanation. When fear creeps in, and suddenly you're the one who breaks it off, just to avoid being the one left behind. I've seen many Aries sitting in the quiet after the firestorm has passed, their heads bowed before the ashes of a love they never meant to burn, not because they wanted to destroy something good, but because they didn't know how to keep it without setting everything else on fire. You see, the Aries flame doesn't know how to hold back. It loves all the way or not at all. It burns bright or it disappears. No gray area, no in-between, and in some way, that is your greatest gift. People might forget a love that was gentle, but they will never forget the love of an Aries. Your love sweeps them into a storm of passion, of honesty, of words that don't wait for permission. You love like you're rescuing their soul from a world that forgot how to feel. But then, that same fire starts to burn down. The shelter you were both trying to build. You didn't mean to, you didn't even notice. You were just doing what you always do, loving the way you know how. But maybe this is the moment to pause, to look a little deeper. Because love doesn't always need a wildfire. Sometimes it just needs a candle, small, steady, but warm enough to light the way back home. Warm enough for someone to stay, not to burn with you, but to help you tend to the flame together. Because if you keep loving like it's a battlefield, one day you'll be standing in victory, but there will be no one left to hold, no one to share the joy, no one to whisper. You don't have to be strong all the time. So Aries, if you've ever pushed someone away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you were so afraid of being abandoned, that you abandoned them first, leave a few words below this video. Not to blame, but to forgive yourself for loving too fast, too much, too brightly, to realize some fires are not meant to be released into the wind of emotion. They are meant to be held, guarded, nurtured. As someone who's witnessed hundreds of Aries love stories, I've learned something important. Not every flame is meant to warm. Some flames are born, burn down the ego, the control, the fear, so that from the ashes, a new kind of love can grow. And that is exactly why we need to go deeper. Because your impulsive fire, Aries, is only the smoke on the surface. Beneath the ash lies something unspoken, something that's been driving everything. Your deepest fear, that quiet panic, that if you don't hold on tight, you'll be left. That if you don't burn bright, you'll be forgotten. That if you don't speak first, act first, walk away first, you'll be the one who hurts first. But Aries, the truth is, you were never really abandoned. You just never let yourself stay long enough to see that real love doesn't run. Now, let me take you underneath that fire, to the place where your fears live in silence, to the place that makes you burn the whole forest, just to silence the sound of stillness. And this is where we meet the part of you you've been avoiding for far too long. The fear beneath the fire, the very thing keeping you from holding on to the love you truly need. So let's go there, softly, slowly, because sometimes to heal a soul made of fire, we don't need more light, we just need to listen. The world only sees your fire, but only you, Aries, know what's trembling underneath that flame. A quiet quake no one can name. A soft, tender ground, always on the edge of breaking. In that place, you're not the warrior. You're not the fearless one. You're not the strongest in the room. You are a soul shaking, just trying to keep it all from falling apart. Dear Aries, you're not cold-hearted. You're not controlling. You're not as harsh as they think. You're just scared, scared of being left behind. Scared you love too much, scared that if you don't take control, you'll be the one who ends up hurt. You're scared of the silence after a call goes unanswered. You're scared of the delay in a message. You're scared when the person you love suddenly looks distant, and that fear, it doesn't scream, it drips, like a quiet rain on an old rooftop, soft at first, then heavier, louder, flooding, and that's when you start acting. You text too much. You say things that sting. You ask for reassurance. You demand things, even things you're not sure you actually want. But you can't stop, because in your mind, if you don't hold on, they'll slip away. If you don't prove you're worth it, someone else might take your place. If you don't strike first, you'll be the one who bleeds, and just like that, you become the one who ruins the very thing you once prayed for, with trembling hands that hold on too tight, with a heart that hurts, but still screams. You don't do it because you're mean. You do it because you don't know any other way to keep from breaking. I've sat with Aries who were just like that. They didn't cry when they got dumped. They cried when they realized. They were the ones who pushed love away first. They didn't hurt from being rejected. They hurt because they had blocked their own path to happiness, just because they couldn't sit with a few seconds of silence in the relationship. I remember an Aries woman in her 40s who once held my hand during a healing session and whispered, "I loved him, but I screamed at him just because he was silent for 3 hours. Then she broke down in tears, not because I was angry, but because I thought he'd already left me in his heart." Dear Aries, you are not alone. I know from the lens of Buddhist wisdom, all pain begins with attachment. And you, Aries, often attach yourself to rapid heartbeats, to fiery emotions, to repeated promises just to feel loved. But real love doesn't need proof. It needs trust. And it's in the absence of guarantees that you are invited to grow. God never asked us to love so we could control. God doesn't love us because we get it all right. He loves us when we rebel. He loves us when we don't feel lovable at all. And if you can believe that you are still worthy of love, even on your weakest days, then you no longer need to control anything. You'll learn to breathe with love, not fear losing it every second. Have you ever yelled, Aries? Not because you were mad, but because you were afraid. Have you ever pushed someone you love? Not because you lacked patience, but because you couldn't bear feeling forgotten? If so, leave your story in the comments below. There is no shame here. We're not here to judge. We're here to heal. And sometimes sharing a moment of your pain becomes the door for someone else to stop repeating theirs. I believe every controlling act comes from a heart that's been abandoned, a heart that prayed all night and got no answer, a heart that learned to love but was never taught how to wait. But you don't have to live in that fear forever. You're not that child anymore. Not now. Now you can pause. Now you can step back and whisper, I don't have to chase anymore. What belongs with me will stay. God is with you. In every moment you doubt your worth, and Buddha lives within you. When you dare to sit still in the storm of emotion without reacting. When you learn this, you realize peace doesn't come from controlling others. Peace comes from accepting yourself even with the waves, the cracks, the moments you feel small. And true love, it never asks you to be perfect. It simply hopes you'll stay long enough to feel that even when you're quiet, even when you're lost, there is still a safe place waiting for you to come home. But Aries, when fear starts driving your actions, it soon takes over your words too. And there's one thing even more dangerous than silence. Words spoken while you're trembling, not trembling from rage, but from the inability to say gently, what you're terrified of losing, and that, Aries, leads us into another wound quieter, but sharper than a blade, where truth becomes a weapon, where your voice begins to hurt the one you're trying to hold onto. Let me take you there, to the place where you can see how you've used your words as walls instead of bridges, because sometimes truth without love becomes cruelty, and that is what we must now bring into the light, so healing can truly begin. Not everyone has the courage to speak the truth, and not everyone has the tenderness to tell the truth without causing pain. But Aries, you're someone who always chooses truth. You're the first to name what no one else dares to touch. When you love someone, you don't hide your feelings. You don't sugarcoat. You don't put shiny masks on what's real. You believe honesty is love. You believe saying it straight is kindness. That soft words and silence are just sugar-coated lies. And yes, in many ways, your honesty is a gift. It brings clarity. It keeps relationships from drifting into fake calm waters. You say what you think. You show what you feel. You call out what others choose to avoid. But there's a thin line between truth and harm, and sometimes, when you cross that line, you don't realize your words have become weapons. You weren't trying to hurt anyone. You just wanted to be understood. You wanted to be real. You wanted to say what felt right. But sometimes, the person you love the most ends up in tears because of a truth they weren't ready to hear, not because they're weak, but because they weren't prepared for a storm, dressed in honesty. Have you seen that look in someone's eyes, Aries? When you said, "I don't feel anything anymore." When you told them, "If you were good enough, you'd know what I need," or maybe just, "I'm being honest to save us time." And then you watched them shrink, take a step back, not because you were wrong, but because you forgot something sacred. Truth without love is a hit to the softest part of someone's heart. In Buddhist teaching, truth never stands alone. Truth walks hand in hand with compassion. Like fire needs light, like water needs warmth. Truth without love is just reasoning, and reasoning used at the wrong time in the wrong way can become a chain that tightens around someone's heart. I once met an Aries man in a private healing session. He didn't cry. He just stared at his hands for a long time, and then he whispered, "I just wanted her to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I spoke too fast, too cold, and then there was no next time. I didn't see someone harsh. I saw a man trying to be real, but losing the way back to a heart that needed shelter." Dear Aries, no one blames you for being honest, but sometimes what's needed isn't the raw truth. It's the truth wrapped in trust, in a hug, in listening. Have you ever said something you still regret today? A sentence you thought was fair, but ended up being a goodbye. A comment you thought would wake them up, but instead pushed them away for good. If you have, write it down below this video, not to punish yourself, but to forgive the version of you who once used words like walls, and who is now learning to speak from the heart. You are strong, Aries, but strength isn't about speaking louder. It's not about slicing through silence with sharp conclusions. Real strength is holding back a true statement to protect a heart that's already breaking. It's saying what needs to be said, with a tone as soft as a prayer whispered into the night. God once said, "The words of the righteous are a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence." That means your voice can build a home or send someone running from what was meant to be their safe place. You can choose, you always can, and if you've ever hurt someone with your words, even if you thought you were just being honest, remember this: maturity isn't about always being right. It's about knowing when to step back, when someone else's heart is trembling. No one teaches us how to speak truth with love. We learn it through the moments we get it wrong, when we speak faster than someone's heart can keep up, when we forget our words might live in them forever. Be gentle with your words, like you'd be gentle with someone waking from a beautiful dream. Don't startle them, sit beside them, and whisper, because sometimes you don't have to say everything to be understood. You just need to be real, soft, and loving enough to stay. And when you learn to hold back a few words, when you pause to feel instead of react, you'll notice something surprising. Love doesn't disappear, it stays, and it grows in the quiet spaces you once feared. But Aries, it's those very silences, the ones you once called boring, that are actually the truest test of your heart. Because when emotions calm down, when the thrill fades, when the everyday stretches longer than the passion-filled nights, will you still stay? Can you still love when the fire isn't burning wild? Let's go there next, because what truly frightens you isn't the words, it's the silence after them. And sometimes it's peace itself that confuses your heart more than chaos ever did. Some fears don't arrive in the middle of a storm. They come when the sky is too quiet, when there's no wind left to shake the trees, no arguments left to ignite, no rush of emotions that make your heart feel like it's just met its destiny. Aries, have you ever felt that moment? When love is calm, soft, like a quiet afternoon with no surprises, and suddenly you feel anxious, not because something's wrong, but because everything feels too right. You start to wonder, why isn't my heart racing anymore? Why don't we text like we used to? Why does it feel like I can sleep through the night again? And then, something inside whispers, maybe the love is fading, maybe the spark is gone, maybe I chose the wrong person. But Aries, that's not the end, that's an invitation to walk deeper into love, not where the drama lives, but where the depth begins, where you don't burn, you tend, where the heat doesn't overwhelm, but warms from within. You were born under fire, bold, brilliant, always moving forward. You love like your heart is a firework, constantly needing ignition to feel alive. But love sometimes isn't fireworks. It's a little lantern in the dark, not flashy, not loud, but always there showing you the way back. I remember a man, Aries, once told me, I left a woman because I thought she stopped loving me. She stopped clinging, stopped being jealous, stopped needing constant reassurance. But after she left, I realized what I thought was the end of love was actually maturity. Aries, have you ever walked away like that? Not because you didn't love her anymore, but because the high was gone, and then realized you just lost the one thing that was holding you steady when everything else told you to run. After years of meditation, I've come to believe the stiller something is, the deeper it runs. The simpler something is, the longer it lasts. The quieter something is, the truer it feels. Love works like that too. After the thrill, the chase, the heat of kisses that burn the skin, comes the real choice. Will you stay and enter a new world of quiet companionship? Or will you run chasing echoes of a feeling you had before? But Aries, no one can live on adrenaline alone. You can't love forever on intensity, because if you keep demanding your heart to beat faster, you'll never feel the grace of a heart that beats steady, loyal, grounded, true. I know you fear the loop. You fear boredom, because to you, if something doesn't make you tremble, it's not worth keeping. But have you ever asked yourself, is that the truth or just a habit? Because sometimes what you're calling boring is actually stability. A relationship that doesn't need chaos to feel alive, where silence isn't absence, it's comfort. And maybe you never really learned how to appreciate that. If you've ever thought your love was dying, but later realized it never left, it just started breathing on a different rhythm, share your story with us. Your words might help someone save something they didn't know they were about to lose. Aries, your heart isn't wrong for craving emotion, but remember, feelings have layers. Some burn, some whisper, and the deepest ones often make no sound at all. Real love doesn't need to feel wild to be real. It just needs you to stay and be clear-eyed enough to see that what you once called the end of love might actually be the beginning of its truest form. The truth is, what makes peace so hard to hold has nothing to do with the other person or the pace of the relationship. It's something inside of you, that hollowness that creeps in when life slows down, that unease when there's nothing left to fight for or prove or chase. Do you see it now, Aries? When the drama fades, you have to face yourself. No more excuses to shout, to argue. No one left to blame, just you and the quiet places in your heart you've never sat with. And that's where the real conversation begins, between you and the heart you've been hiding from. So before you decide your love has run cold, sit still, breathe with the ordinary, touch the moment that has no climax, because maybe, just maybe, that's where the kind of love lives that doesn't have to be felt, to be real, because it's already part of who you are. And then you might finally see, not all panic comes from the outside. Some of it rises from something quieter, the fear of taking off the armor, the shield you've always worn so no one sees how soft you really are, but also the shield that keeps love from reaching the place you need it most. So, if you truly want lasting love, the next thing to learn isn't how to feel more. It's how to lay down that armor you thought was keeping you safe, but might be the very thing keeping love out. There are warriors who never take off their armor, not because they're always ready for battle, but because they never know who will strike next. They don't know when pain will come or how much softness they still have left to give. Aries, you are one of those warriors. People see your strength, your confidence, your fire, your boldness to act and speak. They assume you don't need anyone, that you fear nothing. But beneath all of that is a heart always in defense mode. You've learned to walk into love wearing a mask, the mask of someone who knows exactly what they want. You lead, you decide, you always seem in control, but the truth is, you're just trying to keep from being seen. Because once someone really sees you, sees your need to be loved, your fears, your tenderness, you worry they'll leave. Leave because you're no longer exciting, no longer the flame that can't be put out, no longer invincible, so you react first. You stay strong, you stay sharp. You move the pieces like it's a chess game. You speak with power just to cover the quiet sighs inside your chest. And when someone gets too close, you pull back, you burn brighter, hotter, so they won't see the parts of you that you're still learning to forgive. Has anyone ever told you being vulnerable isn't a weakness? That sometimes saying I'm not okay is the most courageous thing you can do, that you don't need to be flawless to be loved. I remember an Aries woman once telling me through tears, I just wanted him to guess that I needed him. I couldn't say the words, I need you, because saying it meant losing control, it meant being weak, it meant not holding my ground. So she stayed silent, strong, cold, until he walked away, and there she sat not as the winner, but as a soul who had missed her chance to be loved the way she needed. Aries, I know you're afraid. You once gave everything too fast, too open, too true, and then you weren't chosen, you were left, ignored, dismissed, so you made yourself a promise. No one will see that side of me again. No one gets to reach that deep again, but that promise became a wall, a shield, armor, and now you find yourself alone, even in relationships that feel real. Because how can someone touch your heart if you won't open the door? Love is not a battlefield, it's a sanctuary, a place where you don't have to fight to be seen, where you don't have to earn someone staying. Real love begins when you put the sword down, when your heart trembles, but still stays open. When you say, I'm not okay and don't fear judgment. When you breathe deeply and believe that someone could love you even in your mess. In the spiritual path, nothing is more noble than the courage to remove the mask of strength. Because the moment you're most real is the moment you touch the deepest love. You don't need control to feel safe. You don't need to always decide. You don't need to win every argument. You just need to sit down, look them in the eye, and breathe with them. Have you ever chosen strength over truth? Stayed silent instead of saying what you really needed? Pushed someone away just because you were scared they'd see your soft side? If you have, share it. Write it below this video, not to be pitied, but so someone living in the same armor knows they're not alone and knows there's a way out. Dear Aries, you were born to shine, but no one asked you to burn forever. No one loves you because you're unbreakable. The one meant for you will love your darkness too if you trust them enough to show it. You don't need a relationship to prove you're right. You need arms wide enough to fall into, not as a warrior, but as a human still breathing, still loving, still longing to heal. And then something magical happens when you learn to put down the armor. You stop chasing victories and start seeking peace. You no longer need someone to match your energy. You just want them to stay when you stop performing, when you get soft, when your fire isn't a weapon anymore. It's at that moment that love truly begins to grow, because finally, you've given it a place to live not in your glory, but in your truth. And when you learn to stay like that, not gripping, not forcing, not fighting, that love will not leave. You've come so far from the fire of emotion, to the stillness of your inner world, from impulsive bursts, to the calm of a heart that's grown. And now, it's time to close this journey with one final truth, deeper, gentler, and the key to an entirely new kind of love. Love is not a war, it's the place you come home to. Not every flame is born to fight. Some flames are just searching for a home, a place where they don't have to shine so brightly, just a place to be seen, to be kept, and to be trusted. Aries, throughout this entire journey, you've carried one quiet question deep inside. What must I do to be loved, without having to fight to keep that love every single day? Maybe you've never said it out loud, but I know, beneath all those times you chose strength, beneath the exits you made before anyone could turn their back on you, there's still a quiet part of you praying for a love that doesn't need to be conquered, controlled, or proven. A love where you can simply be and still be loved. The final lesson doesn't arrive as advice. It comes like a whisper, like the breeze slipping through a half-closed door, like the lingering warmth in an old jacket left by someone who used to wait up for you, like the silent gaze of someone who never promised anything but always showed up. And that whisper says, love is not a battlefield, it is a sacred place where you return without armor. You don't need anyone to survive, that's true. You're strong enough, independent enough, resilient enough to face the storm alone. But when you choose to love, please, love with a heart that's not holding a weapon. Because if everyone enters love holding a sword, who will dare open their arms to receive it? I once saw an Aries cry just because someone gave them a hug, not because they were starved for affection, but because for the first time they didn't have to earn it. No need to be funny, no need to be fiery, no need to control the room. Just to stand there, tired, silent, and be held. True love doesn't ask you to be the sun all the time. It allows you to be the night. So someone can sit beside you, tell an old story, and pour you a little warm tea. You don't have to love like you're fighting for a place in someone's world. You just have to show up real, present, soft enough not to hurt yourself, and gentle enough not to wound others just because you were once left behind. Aries, every flame needs a home to stay warm. No one, not even you, can keep burning endlessly in open air. Eventually, you'll need a place to pause, to breathe, to gently say, I don't need you to be perfect, I just need you to stay when I can't keep running anymore. And you deserve that. A space where you're not the leader, not the emotional anchor for two people, but just a soul learning how to open up. True love doesn't come to make you better. It comes to make you real. If your heart feels a little heavy right now, that's a good sign, because what truly touches you never arrives with noise or show. It comes like a drop of water, slowly soaking into a crack in your heart that's been frozen for far too long. So write down what you're ready to let go of, so you can love better. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's a pride that once made you feel strong. Maybe it's a fear you've never dared to name because you're not alone. On this path, there are thousands of Aries souls, also learning how to live lighter, love deeper, and lay down their weapons, to finally come home to themselves. I'm here, as someone who's walked a few steps ahead, and I want to leave you with this. You don't have to win at love. You just have to stay long enough, open up honestly, and love like it's a shelter, not a race. Thank you to you who's listening with an open heart, wherever you are, whatever story you're carrying. I hope this journey has touched a quiet place inside you. May you be brave enough to hold on to what matters before your own hands push it away. And may you find a love that doesn't need proof, only presence.